What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Good to see everybody here. I'll catch up on the chat in a little bit. We're going to talk mainly today about how the final interviews for the iOS developer position at Aluna are going. Real quick, I got about 100 to 150 responses based on the video I put out on this channel. And we narrowed it down to 6 people, that were going to do the on-site final in-person, 3-hour interview. And that's what I was doing this past week. And just kind of wanted to talk about how that went. And then also some tips on like how you can improve your chances, if you're in that situation. For those that are new to my live streams, how I typically do this is I talk about something for about 15 minutes or so. The interviews will be, and then I'll go ahead and do a bunch of Q&A. If we can kind of keep our questions on theme of interviews, if possible, just because that's the topic that's fresh in my mind, that'd be cool. Don't get me wrong, happy to answer anything else. But also, like I said, I'll talk for 15 minutes, and then questions will just kind of stack up. So if you're at the bottom of the stack and you want your question moved up to the top, or if you just want to support the channel, feel free to super chat, and that will boost your question all the way to the top, and I'll answer it as soon as I'm done answering the current question. Cool. So let's say what's up to the chat. Looks like we got about 65 people in here already. Cool, good stuff. Kevin Teixeira was the first one in here. Jason, good to see you. Glad you can make one. I am not a professional snowboarder. Maybe I'll talk about that in a bit. I don't have time to say hi to everybody. Franklin, what's going on? Josh Adams, how's it going? Mirko, good to see you. Been interacting with Mirko a lot on Twitter lately and in the comments. Yeah, skiing might be easier. Paul Hudson's stream will be right after this as well at 10 a.m. PST. So get a little bit of a double feature if you like. I'll finish up probably a little bit right before then, and then you can take a little break and hop over there for some live coding. All right, let's go ahead and just kind of talk about this topic real quick on, how these interviews went. So again, I gave the take-home project to 10 people, and of those 10, I narrowed it down to 6 to actually come on site. And just some takeaways from the take-home project. Real quick, this sounds like common sense, but obviously I got some take-home projects that didn't do this, so maybe people don't know. Like the number one thing is clean up your code when you turn in a take-home project. If you have code commented out, or if you have print statements everywhere, or just inconsistent spacing, like it was very obvious to people that went back in and cleaned up after themselves versus the people that just like submitted a project. So that's just, again, remember, you're submitting this to be assessed. You're being compared to other developers. You're being graded, if you will. It's like turning in the rough draft of a homework assignment, right? You wouldn't do that. So that was a big thing. Another thing that kind of hurt some of the finalists going down the stretch was an overuse of third-party libraries. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can't or shouldn't use third-party libraries, but I wouldn't use them for every little thing, like every little transition or animation or stuff like that. Because really, if your take-home project is nothing but libraries, it doesn't really show what you can do, right? You're just using libraries to do everything. That said, there's a fine line between like wasting time reinventing the wheel. So if it's a huge thing, Alamo Fire is pretty common. But if you're doing a take-home project, I would actually recommend doing just URL session. Only because that shows that you know how URL session actually works rather than just relying on a library. So those are some things that hurt some candidates there. And design was a big deal for us. So I don't expect all developers to be, designers. But right, we're iOS developers. In the iOS world and the Apple world, design is a big deal. So I'm kind of saying this, that if you are one of those developers that says, I hate design, I'm not going to mess with design, that's why I have a designer. That's fair. You can do that. I just would recommend at least understanding the human interface guidelines, at least having a good eye for design. I'm not necessarily saying you should be able to create the designs, but design was a big deal, especially in a position like this where you're the only iOS developer. You're going to own the entire app. It's going to be up to you to make sure we're adhering to the human interface guidelines. We're adhering to iOS best practices, design-wise. So again, if you are a developer out there that's just been focusing on code, again, I'm not saying spend too much time on it, but spend some time, learning design a bit. But where we're at in the process is, again, I narrowed down the 10 take-home projects from 150 people down to 6 finalists that came on site. Of those, first of all, they all were great. I mean, imagine that. You were out of 100 to 150 people, you made the final 6. Like everybody that made this to this part, like we would have been fine hiring, It's just, we can only hire one person and we got to take the best person for the job, so to speak. So we got those final 6 and really it was just super tough narrowing it down to the final 2. I say super tough because everybody, again, was good, but these 2 did really kind of set themselves apart. Again, in design, their designs looked like they were ready to go on the App Store. Their code quality was great. And I had a thing called consumer readiness, which I probably messed up because I was trying to be vague enough with my instructions to not tell them exactly what to do. What I was looking for with consumer readiness is to actually handle the errors. So a lot of people would just handle the errors with just a print statement, like, oh, here's the error that happened, but the users don't see your print statement, So I wanted them to actually pop up the errors to the user to say, hey, no network connection or, data failed, whatever. Not many of them did that, so maybe I think my instructions are wrong. Anyway, let's wrap this up real quick. Where we're at is we're down to the final 2 people, and they're going to come in next week for like another extended interview, which again, I was cognizant of not wasting their time, because interviews can drag on forever. But at the end of the day, it's an important decision for the company, whoever this iOS developer, is, because they're going to own the iOS app, which is like our main product. So it's a very important position. So we brought it down to the final 2, and they're going to be coming in again for a more thorough. It's not going to be technical. It's more like personality fit. Because what happens, and again, this is my first time doing all this hiring stuff, so I probably structured the interviews wrong. Each team member of Aluna only got about a half hour with each candidate, right? So naturally, that's not a lot of time to get a lot of context on somebody. So basically, when we got down to the final 2, we're 5 people trying to make a decision. People had different preferences. And at the end of the day, we decided, we just don't have enough context on these people. Well, I did, but the rest of the team didn't. So that's why we're bringing them in again. So hopefully this whole hiring thing will be behind me. Because it is one thing I didn't realize is how it's a full-time job. Like I haven't really coded all that much in like 3 weeks because I've been doing nothing but hiring, interviewing, finding people. The worst part of this was sending the rejection emails, right? Because like I said, especially down at the end, like all 6 of those candidates were great, and sending those rejection emails like really, really sucked. And I did my best to send as much feedback to them as I possibly could. So that's where we're at. I will let you guys know how that finishes up. And I have a lot of plans, talking about this whole process once it's all done. So if you have any questions on like how I looked at the take home project, how I graded it, just like putting yourself in their shoes, happy to answer those interview specific questions, especially around a take home project, because that's what we did. So if you can ask those type of questions, happy to answer them. And again, I'll answer, everything else. Let's see here. Let's catch up on the chat a little bit. Mark Moikin's in the house. What's going on, Mark? Appreciate you moderating again. Roman says, hey, Sean, do you plan to make any videos about app architecture in the future? Thank you. Roman, thank you for serving me up I can go on my rant here. First of all, I'll preface my rant with saying that like I don't really do MVVM or Viper or something, but right, the big knock on MVC is massive view controller, right? That's the big knock on it. That's why everybody's looking for different, that's not the only reason, right? Testing and all that stuff, but a main reason is because to avoid the massive view controller. But I just think you're using MVC wrong. Like if you use composition, compartmentalize your code, like I have a pretty big production app, and my largest view controller is, a little over 200 lines of code. And even that freaks me out as being way too long. So my opinion, and programming is very opinionated, right, is that I think all these different architectures are very niche, in my opinion. Like I think MVC works just fine 95% of the time, and I think people are just looking for like, it's almost like a shiny new toy. Oh, this new architecture. I don't know. I just don't buy into that whole mindset. So that's my rant on that. So to answer your question, if I'll be doing videos on MVVM or Viper, maybe like a basic video, but I'm just not really a fan of them, because I do believe like at a certain point, like too much abstraction and too much cleverness becomes a bad thing, right? There's a happy medium. So sometimes I think those can get just like too clever, more clever than they're worth, right? So anyway, let me get back to, before I get into the whole like question session. So if you start having questions, start stacking them up. I'm almost done with my little updates, and then we'll get into that Q&A going. So I have a very, very busy month of March. So the only videos you're probably going to see this month are Swift News, because I'm never not going to do Swift News, right? That's the staple of the channel. Because I'm working on my talk for London that I'm doing in like March 21st or 22nd at iOS Con, again in London. So I just started like working on the talk. I gotta, finish it, practice it, really dial it in, because it is my first ever talk. A little bit nervous. So that's going to be my focus of this month. So just if you don't see any videos besides Swift News, that is why. Real quick announcement. Speaking of Swift News, some idea I had that I'm working on that I'm hoping to release this week is something I'm calling the Swift News Compendium. And I'll probably do this every year. And the reason I had this idea is because so many times I'll have like been working on something and been like, oh, I know I covered that on Swift News, 3 months ago, but I can't remember what episode or where. And it's such a pain in the ass to go, dig through all the episodes in the show notes and find it. Or sometimes, whatever, that's the example. So what I'm doing here is, and I'll show you, I'm building this PDF that is basically just like a resource, right? It's going to be an ebook, but it's not like a book you read. And I'll show it to you here real quick. So it's going to be like a PDF that you can just search. That's the key thing. It's searchable. You do Command F and you can search. You can be like, oh, when did Sean talk about Core ML? Core ML. Search for it, hit enter, and then bam, all the Core ML, topics on Swift News pop up. So that's kind of the idea behind this, is to just a real quick, as you can see, I provide the link. I give a quick little 1-sentence thing on what it's about, and then you can go check it out. So there's 2 ways I envision this being used. Like I said, a searchable resource, like, oh shit, when did Sean talk about Lottie and what did he say about that? And you just search in Lottie and boom, you'll find it right away. Also, maybe you're new to the channel and Swift News has been going on for almost a year. We're gonna have some more on that in a bit. So maybe you've missed all these episodes and you don't want to go back and watch, a 15-minute episode for everything, right? So this is just a great resource to go back, look through real quick, find the stuff you like, see the links, and if you want to like watch the show to see what I said, there's a link to the show, and then all the links, etc. So that's kind of what I am working on right now. I'm hoping to release that by midweek. Let me know what you think of that. That was kind of just a real quick idea that I thought I could whip up in a couple days and put out there. It will be an ebook for sale. I'm thinking like $5, just real quick, thing. Because I do got to build a business around this if I ever want to do it full time one day. So anyway, let me know if you think that's helpful or if you have ways that I could improve on that to make it even more helpful. But I know I've gotten tons of comments like saying, hey, when did you talk about this? Or do you have the link to that one Swift News where you talked about GitHawk or whatever? And, I don't know. It's been so long. So that's the idea for this, just to be a great resource that you can go back and reference. So been working on that, over the past couple days, leading up to my talk. I also started 100 Days of Swift. Paul Hudson is doing this initiative. If you're not familiar with it, I'm doing it on both Instagram and Twitter. So we can check that out real quick here. So I'll pull up my Instagram and there you go. So you see, I'm just doing these quick little like time lapses, for, Structs Part 1. As you can see, we'll play it here, just to talk about, what I'm doing with these 100 Days of Swift. So far, it's great. The main reason I'm doing it is to just really lock down the fundamentals, right? Especially if you've been doing this for a while, you stop doing those basic tutorials, maybe you don't use a certain thing all that often, right? And you kind of forget about those fundamentals. So my whole reason for doing 100 Days of Swift is to just really, really just drill those fundamentals. And I compare it to a sport, right? I grew up playing sports my whole life. You don't just shoot 3 jump shots and think you're the greatest shooter in the world, right? You got to shoot 1,000 shots a day kind of thing. So that's kind of the mindset I'm taking with 100 Days of Swift there. Join me. You follow the hashtag 100 Days of Swift. I think Paul said he had like 2,000 people that started it or something like that. So tons of people are doing this. And I think it starts off with just, because I'm only on day 9, it starts off with just like going over the fundamentals, but eventually we'll be building like projects and stuff like that. So the reason Paul started this was, it was just a great answer to, hey, I want to learn Swift. Where do I start? Give me a plan kind of thing. So that's kind of what I've been working on as well. All right, my rant's over. Let's get into the Q&A. Let me catch up on the chat a bit here. Go down a bit and all right, let me get caught up and find out where the questions start here. GG says, okay, looks like I only have a few questions. So go ahead and start asking the questions. So now I'll be getting to them relatively quickly. And for those, again, that are new here, I go for about an hour. So I'll probably end shortly before 10. And then you guys can hop over to watch Paul do some live coding. So GG says, hey, Sean, do you have experience with Realm database? Very, very minimal. One of the projects I was working on while contracting, this wasn't a project I was building from scratch. It was one that I kind of jumped in to help out on while one of the other devs was on like a 3-week vacation. So very, very minimal. And I was like learning and fumbling my way through it as I go. So I have touched it. I would not claim to be any sort of knowledgeable person on it, to be honest with you. What? How was Kevin's Hi Sean before mine? Mine shows first. No, it showed first on mine, Jason. All right. Shalish says, make a tutorial on UI testing. That is coming very, very soon. Here's why. So some interview updates. I've mentioned this on my podcast, but I don't know how many people know. So I'm not actively interviewing yet. I am leaving my position at Aluna probably around May, June, July, something like that. So I'm not like actively going out there looking for positions yet. However, I have mentioned it on this channel. I've mentioned it on Swift Over Coffee. So even just that light mentioning, I've gotten companies reaching out to me. For example, I have what happened with YouTube is they saw my YouTube channel, loved it, and I got fast tracked to the final interview with YouTube. So I have a call with the YouTube recruiter on Tuesday to kind of like set all that up and talk about that. I have an interview with Robinhood coming up in April as well. So I'm scheduling all my interviews after my talk in London because like I just said, that's going to dominate the next month. I can't be studying for interviews at that time too. So I'm going to start interviewing in April. I got YouTube, Robinhood, PayPal. Those are like the main ones, possibly Tinder. Anyway, and I haven't even like started really applying yet. So how this relates to this testing tutorial is, I've said this time and time again, testing is one of my weak spots, right? As a contractor, you're trying to knock out a project very, very fast, or working at a small startup when you're building the entire app and everything's, it's agile. So you're constantly changing or changing things. So testing kind of comes at the end. I don't have a lot of experience testing. That said, in preparation for these interviews, I'm going through Paul Hudson's, if you want the book, link in the description, book on testing. So once I go through that book and I, solidify my understanding of testing, I will be doing videos on that. Very long answer to a simple question. Othman says, I'm interested in machine learning and Swift and started my journey with it, but some people are telling me Python is the way to go for that. Your opinion, an 18-year-old. I'm not big into machine learning. I do know that Python was the go-to language. That may be changing. Like I know TensorFlow, because Chris Latner's at Google in working with TensorFlow, and they're starting to use Swift for their TensorFlow machine learning. So I think Python was the establishment, but I think other languages are kind of jumping in. But again, take that with a grain of salt. I am not a machine learning expert. Chuck Underwood says, aloha, Sean. Love your channel. Do you know any other programming languages? Just HTML, CSS, and minimal JavaScript. As you might be able to tell, like from this channel and building a business around Swift, I've just gone all in on Swift. That's kind of how I've decided to take my career. I'm not saying everybody should do that. That was my decision, just to build a business around Swift, just know Swift, become, I'm not there yet, become a Swift expert, in a few years. That's kind of how I've taken my career. So no, I have not taken the time to learn other languages besides, again, the HTML, CSS, and a little JavaScript. And that's just to build my own website, seanallen.co. There's pros and cons to that. Like I said, I'm building my career on Swift on purpose. I know a lot of people say, the typical, you're not a real programmer if you only know one language or silly stuff like that, or, languages don't matter as long as you know programming, all that good stuff. That's fine. I agree with it. I do think you're going to be very, very versatile and much more well off if you do know multiple languages. I think that's objectively true. I don't think you can debate that. Again, I've just decided to take a different decision with my career and different path, if you will, more specialized versus kind of general. Viren says, hey, Sean, you are awesome. Thanks for the kind words. Justin Hurst says, how long did it take you to learn iOS development to the point you were confident in applying for jobs? So I'm going to come out with a video on this soon, not till probably April or later, because this is a very common question, right? People are always saying, when do I know to start applying? And basically the gist of my video is going to be is like, let the market decide. Like what you think doesn't matter. As weird as that sounds, right? Like start applying to jobs. And if you just get rejected and don't even get an interview, you're nowhere near ready. If you start applying for jobs and maybe you make it to the second round of the interview, but no further, now you're getting close. If you are applying for jobs and you're making it to like the final round, now you're ready and you're like really, really close and you're just a little bit away. So I think a lot of people sit inside their own heads too long and think like, oh, I'm not ready yet, or maybe I'm super ready. Again, I say, let the market decide. Like, put yourself out there. And if you do get rejected, we've all been through it. Like my first time going out interviewing at the major companies, I got my butt kicked. And it was a great learning experience. And you get that interview. I always talk about, like, I always relate it to sports, right? When a young up-and-coming, say young up-and-coming basketball team first makes the playoffs, they never win the championship because they're not playoff experienced, because, they just don't have that experience. And, usually, they'll make the playoffs and then lose. Then they'll make like the second round and then lose. And then maybe they'll win the championship or make the finals and then lose. It's a progression. So if you've never interviewed before, I would not walk into your very first few interviews expecting to get the job. I would be walking in there, don't get me wrong, it could happen and that's amazing. But I would go in there thinking like, this is going to be valuable experience. If I get it, great. But if I don't, like, this is just step one in a long journey. So the way of answering that question is, if you know the basics, so if you go to my channel, I have a Swift interview tips playlist. If you go through all that and you understand all that, I would start applying. And then again, let the market decide. What's going on, Jax Macintosh? He said he's going to, Macintosh, said he's going to watch the replay later. Appreciate that. Varun basically said what I said. Don't wait, just go ahead on that. What are your thoughts on Xcode 11? I don't know. Nobody knows. Like, that's going to come out at WWDC in June. I don't know. I don't even have like a wish list, to be honest with you. George Theo says, hey Sean, it's been a long time. Good to see you, George. Happy you can make it here. Robert Ramirez says, question, what is company considering when they are looking for a good fit? This is going to be different for every company, obviously. I can only kind of speak for when I've been part of companies that did that. And really, it's just like a culture fit, right? Like the culture of every company is going to be different, right? If you're working at a cutting edge, bleeding edge tech company where like you have to be, masters in computer science because you're basically a trailblazer, then that might be a more intense, culture fit, and your personality may need to fit in with that kind of crazy bleeding edge, like we're changing the world kind of company. Other companies may be the opposite end of the spectrum where they're just chill, like they're doing great stuff. Excuse me. They're doing great stuff, don't get me wrong, but like it's not such a go fast culture. So if you're a go fast person in a laid back culture, like that might not be a good fit. And I think this good culture fit thing, and it's kind of, vague, but I think it's probably the most important thing because, you have to work with these people every day, 8 to 10 hours a day or however long you work, whatever. Like you spend more time with these people than you do your family. So that good fit is so huge. There is a twist to that in the whole like diversity thing, right? Because oftentimes good fit can like mean everybody like me, or me being like whoever's hiring. And that's not a good thing either, right? Because you want a diverse set of opinions, eyes, backgrounds, etc. So good fit doesn't mean hire all my friends and people that like the same things I like that stuff. No, it's just, will you be a good teammate? Are we going to enjoy working with you? Is really what that is. Nicola says, what is better, to use third-party library or not for animation or calendar or other for senior iOS developers? So this is just my basic to use a third-party library or not. And I can't remember who wrote this blog post, but they really enlightened it for me. I featured it on Swift News. Again, maybe you could search the Swift News compendium to find it. But they talked about like if you can rewrite something in a day or two that a library would have done, yes, that may suck to be like, oh, I could just bring in this library and that will save me 2 days worth of work. But that's very short-term thinking. If you're working on an app that you plan on maintaining for years, it is going to be well worth your time to take a day or two, or hell, even a week, to build it yourself rather than rely on a library. That being said, there is a fine line between reinventing the wheel and not. So a perfect example is in Aluna, we're using iOS charts, like a charting package. Aluna is not like a stock app, right? Where charts are like the centerpiece of our app, right? It's just one screen to show their history. That's it. It's a minimal part of our app. So for me to write my own custom charting package would have taken so long for minimal gain, right? So in that case, I would use a library. So let's say I am a stock app like a Robinhood or NASDAQ or whatever, TD Ameritrade. I am a stock app where you see charts all the time. That's the focal point of my app. In that case, it might be worthwhile to take the 2-3 months to write my own charting package, versus using a third-party dependency for the core functionality of my app. So it's a very nuanced decision and a judgment call, but I lean towards, for super simple stuff, like you said, like animations, with the exception of like crazy animations. I don't know. That's my thing. If it's super simple and would take a day or two to write myself, do it yourself. If not, other things. Like I just said, I feel like I beat a dead horse there. Santos Swift says, hey, Sean, with technical interviews, were you required to do algorithm stuff, linked lists, palindromes, etc.? Are those done in the Swift language or in something else? Yes, you will be required to do that type of stuff, the typical like cracking the coding interview questions I talk about. You'll be doing them on a whiteboard, and 9 times out of 10, they'll let you pick whatever language you want to write it in. So I do them in Swift. Mohammed said, hey, Sean, which book is better to learn, Vapor from Ray Wenderlich or Paul Hudson? Thanks a lot. I've never read either of them. Can't answer. But I can vouch for both Ray Wenderlich's material and Paul's material. Both are great. I don't think you can go wrong. My recommendation would be, if you've used any of their other material before and you liked it or disliked it, base your decision on that. So for example, if you've used Ray Wenderlich before and you loved it, maybe go that way. If you used Ray Wenderlich before and you hated it, maybe give Paul a try, and vice versa. ROL says, hello. Drew says, are you planning to do a video on Grand Central Dispatch? I kind of did that in my Swift interview tips on concurrency and threading, I think was the name of the video. We touched on it, the basics behind that. That was basically how you can answer that interview question. It wasn't like a deep dive into the code. So yeah, maybe eventually I'll do that. Oh crap, my chat jumped around. Sorry. All right, Dia TV says, please give some advice for new iOS developers. This is a very broad question that I can't go into. My whole channel is for new or junior iOS developers. I have over 200 videos talking about that topic. So go to youtube.com/Sean Allen and have a blast. That is I could talk for 3 hours on that. Mirko says, Sean, what are some of the big issues that you're seeing in interviewing people? Like, what is it they are lacking or missing that they should understand as a programmer or software developer that is key? Good question, Mirko. So let me preface my answer with saying that the developers we were interviewing for this position were intentionally junior developers. So if you saw my video where I put out the call for developers, I wanted people who had never had a job before, because somebody took a chance on me back in the day and launched my career, and that's what I was looking to pay forward. So when I say what they did wrong, you may be like, oh, well, that's basic stuff, of course. But again, these were people that might have been fresh out of a boot camp, never had an iOS developer job. So these were very junior developers. Okay, so that being said, one of the biggest issues I saw, again, I gave 10 take-home projects, and I think maybe 7 or 8 of the 10 did this wrong. So I did the movie database, and basically I wanted to see now playing movies and upcoming movies, just 10 of them, right? So you're going to show now playing or upcoming. So you can imagine that being 2 different view controllers. However, they display essentially the same data, and I did this on purpose to see if they would reuse view controllers, right? Reusability was what I was looking for. And again, 7 or 8 out of 10 didn't, right? They just literally like copy and pasted each view controller over and maybe changed like the network call. So I was testing for reusability, and many of them didn't do that. They had, again, a lot of duplicate code. So again, something to keep in mind if you are a junior developer and you are applying for your first jobs, doing your first take-home projects, keep reusability in mind. That'll go a long way because, most junior developers, they just a lot of duplicate code. This is like subclassing a view controller or using child view controllers, etc. Subin Revi says, can you do a video on how to handle the view controllers in your project to make it small in terms of line count? It would be great to get some useful tips. I have that on my list. I haven't gotten to it yet on just like refactoring a massive view controller. I think that'd be a pretty fun little video. It's just there's so many video ideas, so little time. So Subin, I love the idea and it's on my list to do. I'll get to it eventually. This is why I want to go full-time so bad, because I have so many ideas. I think I can just do so much amazing things if I was a full-time YouTuber. But having a 40-hour-a-week job playing basketball, just not enough time in the day. We'll get there someday. And when I do get there, it's going to be great. All right. Emin says, sounds awesome, Sean. I think we're talking about the Swift compendium, I think. Mertlap says, when can we say for ourselves, I am done about Swift. I learned a big portion and can switch to Objective-C. Or what is the purpose of Objective-C at this time? So again, like I said, I'm all in on Swift. There are pros and cons to that. So a lot of legacy code bases, Facebook, Twitter, have a lot of PayPal, have a lot of Objective-C because they've been around, because Swift didn't even come out until, late 2014, early 2015, So any app that's been around longer than that is mostly Objective-C. And if it's a huge app, the cost to switch from Objective-C to Swift is huge. So if you do want jobs in established apps, that is 100% going to be an Objective-C. So yes, it is good to learn it. Like I said, the route I took with my career, because I started my career right when Swift came out. I was like, all right, Swift is a brand new language. I'm all in on Swift. I know that's going to cost me some opportunities in Objective-C code bases. Like I know that, I accept that, but I'm just going all in on Swift. So I don't know. That's the route I took. Do with that what you will, but Objective-C is absolutely relevant. And again, it's for more legacy code bases typically. Because here in Silicon Valley, I see new startups popping up all the time. If a startup started within the last year and they have an iOS app, it's like 98% chance it's in Swift, right? And that's just going to get worse and worse as the years go on, So it's going to take time, but Swift will dominate for sure. Okay, looks like we're getting to the Swift compendium part because everybody's saying great idea, great idea. Kate Holland says, just yesterday tried to find a meme and watched 1 through 25 episodes of Swift News. Kate, it's hilarious you said that. I was trying to find a meme as well, and I knew I did it in the LOL section, and I literally went through like 12 episodes before I found it. So sounds like you're having the same problem, and yeah, I think this Swift News compendium will be great. It's searchable. Just quickly scan it, find what you want, and get that. So glad to see somebody else had that same meme problem. Jose Miguel Trujillo Gonzalez says, hope you're doing great, Sean. Any tips for making an app compatible for iPhone and iPad at the same time? Thanks in advance. So there's 2 ways to do this. Well, not 2 ways to do it, but 2 philosophies, if you will. I prefer the latter. We'll talk about it. Anyway, some people just are like, I just want it to work on the iPad. And they're happy with like a blown up iPhone version just on the iPad, right? Everything looks weird. Just looks like a blown up iPhone app. Some people are happy with that. Like, hey, it works on the iPad. I'm good. I prefer to like design for the iPad, right? Like if I'm trying to think of an example, like sometimes a button on the bottom of a phone might be a certain, width and it looks fine on a phone, but when you stretch that width out on an iPad, it stretches the whole screen and it's this giant button and looks weird, So I prefer to design specifically for the iPad when I do convert it. That being said, that's a hell of a lot more work. Like it's a ton of work to do a native iPad app. Meaning that it's not just a blown up iPhone app. You actually design specifically for iPad type stuff. So yeah, that's a whole nother topic though, but those are the 2 philosophies around it. Nilesh says, hello, what are your thoughts on asking puzzle type questions in interviews? I see the rationale. They want to see how you think. And if you're clever, I get it, but I don't know. For iOS developer interviews, I would rather stick with iOS developer stuff. My personal opinion, but I see where they're coming from. Adam says, does having a graphics card matter? No. For development? No. Roman says, by the way, about your time-lapse videos, what video editor do you use? So he's talking about the time-lapse for the 100 Days of Swift that I'm doing, and I use Final Cut Pro. That's what I use to edit my videos, so it's the same thing. Just basically boost up the speed by 4,000%, and you're good to go. It's actually quite simple. Hector says he's also doing 100 Days of Swift. He's also studying algorithms. Good stuff. You should be ready to start interviewing soon. Adam Aor says, and would actually make will the graphics card make the performance better for iOS Xcode? No. You'll be fine with the default graphics card on a MacBook. What are your thoughts on the future of Objective-C? I kind of just said that. I think it's going to slowly fade away. Again, like I said, if it wasn't, in my opinion, if it wasn't for the legacy huge apps, the Facebooks, the Twitters, being kind of locked into Objective-C, we'd probably see it fading. All the Objective-C people out there are probably going to bash me, but it's fine. Again, like I said, I see new startups all the time out here. 98% of them are in Swift, and then that's just going to get worse as the time goes on. And it'll take a long time, but it'll fade away. How have you tried app code? What do you think about coding experience in Xcode? I've not tried app code. I've only coded Swift in Xcode, so I don't really have anything to compare it to. Stacy Moore says, how do you go about planning your apps? Do you just start coding, or do you lay out and plan before even opening up Xcode? So definitely plan a lot. Actually, if you can see here, good. I'm looking right at it, so I'll pop it back up again. If you see this Instagram post here, this is a quick kind of version. So I got a screen from a designer, and then I used to do this on pen and paper, but I was kind of trying to force the iPad Pro into my developer workflow. So, I'd get a screenshot from the designer, and then I would just, on pen and paper, just write notes on how I would build it. Like you can see here, like you're going to be able to swipe through the noses, swipe through the bodies, and swipe through the thrusters. So I'm going to use like collection views there. Talk about how I'm going to go through the logic on like, because this is going to be all the rockets, so they're going to own some of them and not own some of them. And if they don't own it, I'll pop up a price where they can buy it. And if they do own it, the upgrade button will change to the equip button. So basically, once I get a design, I kind of map it out on pen and paper, or now the iPad, to just kind of, really high level how I'm going to kind of map it out. And what you don't see on this screen is like the next page of the notebook in the iPad is like more detail on how I'm going to structure the data, how I'm going to build my model, and all that stuff. This was just a much prettier picture, obviously. So that's just a really high level, the gist of it. I definitely write it down on pen and paper, or, now the iPad first. I definitely don't jump in right into code. Mark Morgan says, I love Robinhood's UI UX. I agree. They've won an Apple Design Award. Like it's beautiful. I love it as well. Nicola says, what do you need to know to be a senior iOS developer? I feel like I do this rant every week, so I'll do a quick 10-second version of it. There's no black or white line in the sand answer. It's certainly not time. You don't have to be, 5 years now you're senior. It's a mix of how long you've been doing it and what you've done, your experiences, For example, I don't consider myself a senior developer because I've only built apps from scratch to launch. Don't get me wrong, I've built like 10 of them, but I don't have the experience at a huge app like YouTube or something, where there's millions and millions of users, huge engineering team. So until I get that experience, I feel like that's a completely huge and different world of development, and I don't have that experience yet. So you're going to get a different answer from anybody you ask. Adrian says, hello, Sean. I just arrived when you were talking about MVVM. Did you mention that is not so important to apply it or something like that? Greetings. Hey, Adrian, I'll answer real quick. Basically, that was a rant that was a pro MVC rant more so than a negative MVVM rant. But yeah, you can kind of check out the replay. I'm trying to get through these questions so I can finish up on time and not run late. So I'm kind of getting through these kind of quick. Pritam says, hey, Sean, I've joined as a junior iOS engineer recently. Congratulations. What do you think I should do to get my full potential? As you've been in my shoes, an opinion will be appreciated. My opinion might not be everybody else's opinion. I don't know. I just believe just work your ass off. Like throw work-life balance out the window for the first little bit. Let me clarify that. I'm not saying forever. For the first month or two, right? Just to get caught up on the code base, show that you're a hard worker, show what you can do. Like, right, you're making a first impression during these first couple months at a company. And that's what I did. I just went all in, went nuts, and just really demonstrated the value that I could do, showed my work ethic. And don't get me wrong, you can pull back from that as time goes on. I'm not saying completely flip the switch and don't still work hard, right? That's a bait and switch. Don't do that. Just might not have to go as hard, but that's what I would do. Again, I know work-life balance is such a hot topic nowadays, and sure, do whatever you want. That's what I did, and that benefited me greatly. So, and again, you asked what I would do and what my opinion is. That's the answer. What's going on, Herman K? Good to see you. Gearman says there's also R for Swift. I don't even know what that is. Yep, quite clumsy to get your hands on with Python. Okay, I think we're talking about machine learning still. Prefer MVVM or MVC? Feel like we've been down that road. What's your opinion on ARKit? Do you think it will become big within a few upcoming years? I love ARKit. It will not be big within the next couple years. It won't be big until Apple has good glasses. And mind you, Apple is coming out with AR glasses. They're going to be bulky as hell at first. It's going to be ridiculous. Over time, those glasses are going to get more smaller and stylish that people are actually going to want to wear them. So I think it's got about 10 years to go before it gets to be big and mainstream. That said, I think it's still a great investment into your developer skill set to start learning it now, be in from the beginning. You may not have to build, great, huge apps, but just start learning it and getting familiar with it. But yeah, I think it's got about 10 years to go. Yeah, 5 to 10, we'll say. I'll hedge that a little bit. Is developing app in cross-platform such as Flutter a good option or in native? Another question we get every week. So quick canned answer. It's down to the business. It's a business decision between your two apps, right? If you're a small app or an internal app, you're not going to have millions and millions and millions of users, or you're not customer facing, whatever. Cross-platform is perfectly fine. It may make perfect business sense. However, if you are going to go to like the big leagues, like the Twitters, the Instagrams, Airbnbs, like, you know, you got to go native. Like there is a performance boost, and when you have millions and millions and millions of users, that performance is so crucial. You have to go native. So there is definitely a business case for both. Like I think that's why there's an argument, like because that those lines can get blurred a little bit sometimes. But I'm not bashing cross-platform, not bashing native. Obviously, I am a native developer, but it's just whatever makes the most sense for your business, and that is a personal decision. Greg Theo says a company/OS dependent language will never be number one for machine learning. Maybe JS someday. Okay. Stephen Dramont says he made it. Good day, everyone. What's going on, Stephen? Good to see you. Santos says, what sorts of questions are asked when discussing a personal project or take-home project? So I obviously just asked a bunch of these questions lately, and sorry, my chat jumped. Oh man, wow, there's a whole lot of questions. I'm gonna have to like start flying through these. Okay, so it looks like we're gonna go into rapid fire mode after this. Thank you so much for asking all these questions. Got 121 people here. Thank you. Again, I do want to get done by 10 a.m., so about 18 minutes. So, you know, that's when Paul's live coding live stream will start, so make sure you check that out. So if you do want to make sure I get to your question, again, Super Chat is always available. However, I am going to start going rapid fire through these questions to make sure I hit them all before the 18 minutes is up. Cool. So Santos says, what sorts of questions are asked when discussing a personal project or take-home project? So when I did my take-home project, or assigned the take-home project, I left it very open-ended because I wanted to see the decisions they made, you know, on design. You know, did they use a collection view versus a table view, whatever. Like I didn't give them specific design screens to build, right? I left it very open-ended, and that was on purpose because I wanted to talk about their decision making, because that was the most important thing to me. Like, why did they choose this? You know, why did they do it this way? And hearing that discussion, because that's what it was when I reviewed their take-home project. It was a conversation. It wasn't like a coding quiz. It was just a conversation about their project, you know? And I feel like I can get a lot of information just having those conversations. So that's what I asked. Conrad says, just had a lunch with the COO and one of two iOS engineers at a small startup. Was that kind of like an interview or just a lunch? No job in sight yet, but they stress the importance to divide larger projects into smaller tasks, for sure. Yeah, you have to start. That's a common thing in programming, is break up the problem into much smaller and smaller problems. Sorry, I'm trying to get through these questions quick. Josh Adams says, having released an app to the App Store is a good sign of being ready to apply for jobs. I agree, in part. Like, that's not the only thing, because you could release just one table view app and put it on the App Store. So to an extent, you are correct. But that does show that you can think of an app, build it, ship it, and put it on the App Store. Like, you've gone through the entire process. So I will agree that is definitely a good sign there. But again, if you just put up a single view on the App Store that does one thing, that might not go that far. I live in Los Angeles. Is there any startups down here? There's a ton in Los Angeles. Snapchat, Tinder. These are just off the top of my head. There's like two big ones off the top of my head. But yeah, Los Angeles, Santa Monica. There's plenty of companies down there. Thomas Watland says, how are you finding Paul's 100 Days of Swift? Yeah, like I said, I'm just using it to, you know, I've been doing this 4 years. The basic stuff is nothing new, but like I said, it's always great to go back and just review the fundamentals. Like I said, I compared it to a jump shot. I can't just take 3 jump shots and expect to be a great shooter. You got to consistently drill those. Santos Swift says, would take older, less structured personal projects off your resume, or would you leave them to show the interviewer how you've grown as a programmer? I've been taking them off my resume because flat out there was some, or my portfolio, I should say. I only keep the latest 3, or the 3 I'm most proud of. Just because flat out, like, I was just embarrassed of some of the work I've done, because I have grown so far. Or sometimes it was like in contracting where I would turn in the MVP and I would be proud of the MVP, but then they would, you know, after that, it's out of my control. And that would be like a year and a half ago. And then maybe they've done some other stuff to the app to where if somebody downloaded it from the App Store today it's like not my app anymore, you know? So I took those off just because I didn't want to give the false impression, but I try to keep the most recent 3 that I'm most proud of. That's kind of how I do that. Ushara C says, in India, I heard Swift is not doing well and React.js is moving up the ladder very, very fast. How is it in US and your thoughts? And again, I can only speak for Silicon Valley. Native is the way to go in Silicon Valley because everybody here is trying to do huge things. I've heard from a lot of people in my audience in India that, you know, cross-platform, React Native, all that stuff is where all the jobs are. So again, it's your market. You have to know your market and do the best thing for yourself, your market, your job. No one answer is going to be the right answer for the entire globe, right? So know your market. Herman K says, when did you feel you were ready to apply at larger companies? I didn't, obviously, because when I did, I went out and just got destroyed. I think out of like 60 companies I interviewed with, we're talking early 2016. So 3 years ago now, I just got my butt kicked, but that was a great, again, let the market decide. That the market told me like, hey, you're not ready and here's what you need to do to be ready. So even though I wasn't ready, it was still a good thing to do. I'm still thrilled that I did it. So my answer to you is just, you're never going to feel ready. Just do it. Shane Blackburn says, could you post the challenge guidelines or have people create the movie? You know, basically, can you post the take-home test to everybody? I am going to be doing my first course. So the answer is, of course, I could do that. I think that might be detrimental to the business that I'm trying to build because my very first course that I'm going to offer is going to be all based around the take-home test and how to do a good one. We're going to build a take-home test from scratch, you know, step by step. It's going to be like a 20 video course that I'm going to, you know, produce. And it's going to be all around the take-home project. So yeah, we'll more on that, you know, later this year. Sorry, I'm trying to just grab a few questions. Hello, sir. What is the future scope in iOS development? Apple's products price is increasing every year. Because of this, Apple lost 16% market share last year. I'm new in iOS. Please suggest something. Again, same thing. Know your market. This 16% market share, like, is an irrelevant number to me. You think iPhones are going away? You think there's not going to be a big enough iPhone market? Like it's been known globally that Android has the dominant market share globally. Apple still makes the most money. So that's been the common thing, right? It's like, yes, Android has the market share, but iOS customers are the ones that spend money on the App Store. You know, on average, Android users don't spend money on the App Store. Again, on average. So again, know your market is really the answer. If where you live and your jobs are, you know, Apple's not a big thing, then go Android. Like, know your market and do the best thing for you. Mark Moykins echoes, so many videos, so little time. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, Apple will go out of business later this year. Yeah, obviously Josh is being facetious there. No, yeah, that's like I've said this time and time again. Everybody always worries about, should I learn Swift? Should I write iOS apps? Like, my career is tied to Apple. You can say what you want about Apple, love them or hate them. Apple's not going anywhere for a while. Like, I'm not worried about any of that. I think that's useless to worry about. Nicholas says, when we start making advanced videos for iOS development, like to make the same app, in time. So building like a huge long thing like that, it's so much time. And again, I have a full-time job. I do so much podcast, basketball, my time is stretched so thin that I can't do like these huge apps. The one I am doing, like I mentioned before, is going to be for my course. So that'll be coming later this year. But so the answer, when will I do more advanced videos like that, will be when I go full-time YouTube. So I'm expecting 2 to 3 years. Looking forward to seeing you and Paul in London. Don't be nervous, you'll be great. Paul will probably be okay too. Yeah, I'm only nervous because it's like a live coding kind of demo. I'm doing 30 Xcode tips and in 40 minutes. So yeah, it's I'll be doing live demos of it. So that's the only reason I'm nervous. Thanks, Sean. I can understand how difficult it is to create and manage all that you're doing. Keep up the good work. You really inspire me as a person and a developer. Thanks for the kind words, Subin. Appreciate that. Gearman says, are you planning on coming to Bath in July? I am. That's where Paul lives. I'm definitely going to visit Paul at his place and see what's going on there. Yeah, I'll be in London for like a week. So definitely going to be out and about in that area. Josh says Lyft converted their code base to Swift. Yeah, Lyft did that back in like the Swift 2 days. So like Lyft was one of the first major companies to adopt Swift. So I'm a big fan of them and what they're doing over there. So Lyft has been full Swift since like 2015. Hey, Sean, do those learning Xamarin iOS with C# have a disadvantage to those learning Swift Objective-C? I would say yes, right? Because the whole Xamarin C# thing is like a niche, right? Most of the apps are written Swift Objective-C. So don't get me wrong, if you know a ton of companies doing all that, then sure, you'll be fine. But the vast majority are not doing that. Vlad says, now you have 2 basketballs. Have you played recently? So I've taken like the past 3 weeks off because I'm so behind on all my, again, this channel work. It's just I had to kind of cut out basketball for the past couple weeks just to get caught up. Yeah. Are you subscribed to PewDiePie? I am. I'm a YouTuber. You have to know what the number one YouTuber is doing and know what's going on in the YouTube world, right? The YouTube is eventually going to be my career. So yeah, got to keep up to date. And I think he's funny most of the time. Why did you decide to make the Swift News lookup document a PDF instead of a web section of your main site? One, because I'm building the business around this channel so I can go full-time like I'm talking about. So a $5 ebook is another revenue stream. People could think that's greedy or whatever. I'm just being honest. For me to ever go full-time, I have to build revenue. And then the other reason is building a website that I maintain is just a lot of extra work. I can just knock out this ebook once a year and be done. Sean, what's your opinion about RX Swift? And back to that, I don't feel bad, or sometimes I do feel bad about like charging $5 for an ebook, but I have to like slap myself sometimes because it's like I do so much. Like there's 200 something plus videos every week. I spend 5 hours putting out Swift News every week, free content for everybody, free podcasts. I spend so much time doing free stuff. So it's like, even though I feel bad like charging for something, I gotta remember not to do that because it's $5. Like I'm not, anyway, I'll end my rant because I do feel bad doing it sometimes, but I gotta build a business if I ever want to do this full time. Sean, what's your opinion around RX Swift and the functional reactive paradigm in general? I don't know much about it, so I can't give an educated opinion. I've dabbled in it, but not enough to, again, speak intelligently. So I don't want to put myself on the internet saying dumb things, which I do anyway. Hey, Sean, what do you suggest about courses for newbies? I see 2 main courses you advise, Paul Hudson and Ray Wenderlich. Which is better in your opinion, Paul or Ray? Sorry for my English. It's like asking to choose between my children. It's weird to say children. They're both older than me. But no, I started on Ray Wenderlich when I got my start in learning. So Ray's always going to have a special place in my heart there. And I always recommend his courses. And then Paul and I are working closely together a lot now. So Paul does great stuff as well. You can't go wrong either way. Okay. Couple more questions. We got about 5 more minutes. Jaden Irwin says, do you think UIKit on macOS will require separate storyboards and view controller code like tvOS? I'm not sure. You're talking about Marzipan. We're going to find out a hell of a lot about it here in June. So just wait 2 more months, 2-3 more months, and we'll find out. Swifty Tilton Planet, Caleb says, how long did it take you to make an app when you did contracting? I'm wrapping up my current contract and it took me 3 months. I've also done the website and putting together marketing material. So when I was doing the contracts, they were typically about 3 months long to build the MVP of the very first app. And that was like working 40 hours a week for 3 months was pretty standard. So we got a super chat. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. He says, I've learned so much from your channel. Keep up the great work and thanks. So appreciate that, Jason. I hope my little rant didn't make people feel bad. That wasn't the intent. But I have helped out Jason a lot. I know Jason and I have interacted a lot via email, Twitter. I've helped him like with his website and his resume back in the day. So appreciate that, Jason. Thank you a ton here. Okay, let me find my place now. Okay. Jason says, Sean, you still have no work-life balance. I don't know how you do it. Give it up. Yeah. It's like, thank God that I like the people I play basketball with and they're like my friends. So that's like my social life. Because if I didn't, I would have no social life. Anyway. All right. Jean-Christophe says, hey, Sean, thanks for all your contents. Question. I'm a French iOS dev for almost 3 years, and I would like to relocate in San Francisco. Do you have any advice for me to find a company? I've never done that, and moving to a whole new country is a huge deal. I don't have any advice for you because I've never done that, and I don't want to say something just to say something and then have it be wrong, and then that's a big move. Yeah, I would definitely find a company before you move. That being said, it is much easier to find a company if you're already here. So I know that was counterintuitive advice there, but Shakti says, "Hey Sean, lots of love from India. Keep going, dude. My question is how to make home screen for an e-commerce application, adding collection view and table view, or what?" That's a deeper question. That's more of a tutorial. I'm trying to do rapid fire to finish this up in about 4 minutes. Matthew says, "Should I Swift my way to backend?" That's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for Swift on the server to become like, and it's pretty much already there, but like legit and used and very common. Then I'll kind of really start diving into backend and building that. Do you make enough from YouTube to cover your monthly expenses? Not even close. My YouTube ad revenue is about $500 a month. That may sound like a lot, but that's not going to get you anywhere in San Francisco. That's for sure. Or even if I move to even Middle America or anywhere, we're cheap. Like $500 a month is nice. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, that's not going to cut it. Now I do have other revenue streams that I'm building. Like I said, the ebooks, eventually courses. I do personal one-on-one coaching. So the entire business of YouTube, it doesn't do enough to pay full time. I make about $1,300 a month. Again, decent, not enough to do full time anything. That's about, what is that, like $24,000 a year, $25,000 a year, $25,000 a year. Again, decent, but not enough to live full time. We'll get there. That's the goal. Mark Boykin says, "That sounds awesome, Sean, the take-home app course." Yeah, and the whole point of that course is that I want to answer the question, everybody says, when am I ready for a job? How do I know? And the purpose of that course will be twofold. Do that course to get you ready for the job, or B, like if you can take that course, you understand everything, now you're ready. Or again, use it as a practice thing, before your interviews. Sean Allen, what is that PDF thing mentioned by Robert Ramirez? So earlier I talked about Swift News Compendium. For those that are late, I'll pop it up real quick. It's basically a reference for Swift News. So you can quickly, it's a PDF that'll be searchable. That way if you think, hey, Sean featured this in Swift News 6 months ago, but I can't remember what it was, you can go to this document. It's going to be searchable. All the links will be here to whatever you need with a little quick description for every Swift News episode for 2018. And again, the plan is that I will release this every year. So this is the Swift News Compendium for 2018. There'll be a 2019 version, 2020 version, etc. Just to have all these resources there for you to go check out. Radical says, "Don't feel bad for charging money. You should, in my opinion, you should charge more." It's just a mental thing, because I do fine for myself. So like charging money is feels wrong. But again, like I said, I have to keep in mind that if I'm ever going to do this full time, which is when I can give even more back to the community, like there has to be a sustainable business around this. So I got to build that up. Mark Moykin says, "Haha, I have the same problem asking for money. I only got over it just 2 months ago." Yeah, it's tough, man. I don't like doing it. Okay, I think we're getting to the end here. When is your Udemy tutorial coming out? Well, it's not going to be on Udemy. Udemy is a ripoff for the creators. They take 50% of the course thing. It's like, that's ridiculous. So anyway, not going to use Udemy. I'll be using my own platform. More on that. It'll be later this year. Probably June, July, August timeframe. It takes a lot of work to build those courses. Sean, what's the alternative for Firebase? What should we use as the backend for an app? So all the apps I've worked on have had a backend developer attached to it who built their own custom database and custom API that I can check out. So that's what I've been using. But again, that requires either you to know backend development or know a backend developer to also work on the project. Swift on the backend is good. Katura is rock stable. Yeah, like I said, it's pretty much already there. It's just a matter of me finding time to learn it here. This could be compiled per upload. No, it could, but again, that takes work. There's a lot of stuff I could do, but yeah, it's just I don't have time. Perhaps make one of the tutorials, one for the tutorials as well. I could. Yeah, like I said, I have so many ideas of what I can do if this was my full-time job, but it's just, again, not enough hours in the day, man. Any thoughts on making a video on HealthKit integration with iOS app? That would be fun. Yep, it is on my list because I've done that for 2 apps. So I do have plenty of experience with HealthKit and Fitbit integrations. So yeah, Paul Hudson's live stream is starting now. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, I'm wrapping up. We're pretty much to the end here. I'll see if I can find one more question. Nope, looks like everybody's taken off. So cool. Yeah, head on over to Paul's channel. His live stream's starting up. That's Hacking with Swift. He does live coding where he'll build an app over like an hour or 2. Great stuff to learn. Thanks everybody for showing up. We do this the first Sunday of every month. So we'll see everybody in April. Thanks again.